We now present For the Record.
Just ahead, the U.S. Supreme Court this week banning the use of race in admissions.
Universities may change other aspects of their policies.
Plus, all eyes on 2024 as the latest Marquette poll puts Governor Ron DeSantis in the spotlight.
I'm surprised, but when you dig into the numbers, they kind of make sense.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Naomi Coles. The U.S. Supreme Court headlining some major decisions this week, knocking down President Biden's student debt loan forgiveness plan and allowing a website designer to refuse service to same-sex couples. One of its most far-reaching decisions, one that could impact generations to come, the High Court also banned the colleges from considering race in admissions. I am now joined by UW Law School professor Anuj Desai. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Naomi. It's great to be here.
So why don't we just get started first with the foundation of this case? How did it come to be before the U.S. Supreme Court? And, just talk me through some of the basics.
The first case that came up was a case against Harvard, and it was brought by an entity called the Students for Fair Admissions, I believe is their name. Obviously, the people who disagree with them would not consider them fair admissions, but they represented some Asian American students in particular who claimed that the Harvard admissions process was discriminating against them. And that case was brought about a decade ago almost at this point, just to give you a sense of how long litigation lasts. And in the lower courts, both the trial court and the Court of Appeals, the college won, Harvard College won.
Are you able to speak at all to how long taking race as a factor in admissions has kind of existed as a practice in colleges across the states?
Yeah, it's a great question. It has basically been from the 1960s, and it was controversial right from the beginning. At the beginning, it was premised on this idea. I think President Johnson had this statement he made, and I don't know that I have the exact quote, but something like, you don't shackle a man for hundreds and hundreds of years and then bring him up to the starting line and expect him to run the same race as everybody else. And so the idea was for recompense, in essence, for African Americans who had lived for centuries under slavery and then Jim Crow. And the policies have morphed over the last 50, 60 years. But yeah, basically from the 60s and early 70s.
Important context there. Now, this next question is obviously there's so many possible answers, I suspect, but talk me through some of the biggest far-reaching implications that colleges have, right? So we know that they can't consider race now, but there has to be implications that we're not even thinking of right now that could result from this decision.
One thing I think that people don't think about, and it'll be hard to know exactly how this plays out, but is what I might call the dynamic effect of the decision. Universities may change other aspects of their policies in ways that impact a lot of people who are not otherwise being admitted because of race. So just to give one example, many universities have preferences for what are known as legacies. Legacies are children of alumni or grandchildren of alumni. Those students have a preference. Those preferences tend, because of the history of our country, tend to favor those who are white. So if Harvard decided, we're going to get rid of our preferences for legacies, then that will affect legacies. That'll affect the whole system. Another is student athletes. Student athletes get admitted to these selective schools in much, much higher numbers than those who are not recruited for collegiate varsity teams. and a school could decide. I don't know that they will, but I'm just saying, this is open to them to eliminate. I'll be maybe a little bit unfair here, but say their sailing program. The sailing program at most of these institutions most likely favors candidates, applicants for college who are white.
My takeaway from listening to you just now is if schools, now that they can't use race as a way to kind of even the playing field that people of color have experienced historically, what they could do if they value diversity in the way that these schools say they do is perhaps take away these preferences that have historically over benefited white people. Is that a fair way to summarize that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, but it'll be their choice, right?
Right.
And as I said, for a school like Harvard, most that has a sort of a matriculation rate of 75% or something like that. Most of the people who are admitted to Harvard go there. They'll be able to, in essence, dictate to a certain extent, the rest of the collegiate ecosystem, so to speak, right? Because
Absolutely.
what they do will affect the rest of the institutions.
Absolutely. Professor, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for providing this context. I really appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks,
All right.
Naomi.
Thank you. Just ahead, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis with a strong showing in Wisconsin after the latest Marquette poll. We'll be right back.